The war had been over for 3 years, but Prince Caliph of the Zarathi Empire still carried it in his bones. He stood at the window of the human space station, watching stars drift by like frozen tears. His silver skin had lost its shine. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides. The other diplomats whispered that he never smiled anymore, never laughed like he used to before the bloodshed. The peace treaty meeting had ended hours ago. Another day of cold negotiations, careful words, and bitter memories. Caliph pressed his forehead against the cool glass. His people had lost so much. The humans had lost just as much. Now, they all pretended to be friends while nursing wounds that refused to heal. "Excuse me, coming through." A cheerful voice broke through his dark thoughts. Caliph turned to see a human pushing a cleaning cart down the corridor. She was small, even for a human, with messy brown hair tied back and grease stains on her blue jumpsuit. The name tag read, Maya Chun Maintenance. She stopped when she saw him. Most humans either bowed nervously or hurried past when they encountered Zarathi royalty. But this janitor just tilted her head and studied him with curious brown eyes. "You okay there, buddy? You look like someone stole your favorite snack." Caliph blinked all 6 of his eyes in surprise. No one had spoken to him so casually in years. "I am adequate," Maya snorted. "Sure you are. That's why you're standing here looking like a sad statue." She parked her cart and pulled out a mop. "Mind scooting over a bit? Gotta clean this section." The prince, who commanded fleets and governed star systems, found himself stepping aside for a human janitor. He watched her work, humming something tuneful under her breath. The melody was strange, but oddly soothing. "You know," Maya said, wringing out her mop, "I've been cleaning this station for 5 years. Seen all sorts come through. Politicians, warriors, traitors. You military types are always the gloomiest. I'm not military. I am royalty. Even worse than..." She grinned at him. All that pressure to be perfect must be exhausting. Caliph felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like a person instead of a symbol? "You do not know who I am. Prince Caliph of the Zarathi Empire, hero of the Battle of Nexus Gate, youngest fleet commander in your people's history." Maya ticked off the facts on her fingers. Also apparently allergic to earth peanuts, which caused quite the diplomatic incident last year. Heat flushed through Caliph's silver skin, turning it slightly blue. That information was supposed to be classified. "Buddy, I cleaned the medical bay. You'd be amazed what people forget to shred." She dunked her mop again. "But don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Though honestly, it's kind of hilarious. This big, scary alien prince, taken down by a peanut." Something strange happened then. The corner of Caliph's mouth twitched. Just barely, just for a second, but Maya caught it. Was that almost a smile? Alert the media. Prince Grumpy Face has facial expressions. I do not have a grumpy face. You totally do. Look, Maya scrunched up her features in an exaggerated scowl. This is you all day. Girl, I'm so serious and important. The twitch came again, stronger this time. Caliph quickly turned back to the window. You are very irreverent for a janitor. And you're very stuffy for someone who's only, 30 in Earth years. That's like being a baby for Zarathi, right? I am 28 cycles, which is considered young adult. He paused. How do you know so much about my species? Maya shrugged. I read. Lots of downtime between shifts. Plus, I figured if we're all sharing this galaxy now, might as well learn about our neighbors. She finished mopping and leaned on the handle. You know what you need? I'm certain you will tell me regardless of my interest. See, there's some personality. And yes, I will. You need to lighten up. The war's over. You survived. That's worth celebrating, not moping about. Caliph's shoulders tensed. Many did not survive. No, Maya's voice softened. They didn't. I lost my brother at Kepler Station. But you know what he told me in his last message? He said, Maya, when this is over, I want you to laugh twice as hard. Once for you, once for me. The prince finally turned to face her fully. This small human with her mop, and her grief, and her stubborn cheer. I'm sorry for your loss. Thanks. I'm sorry for yours too. But here's the thing. We can't bring them back by being miserable. Trust me, I tried. Spent a whole year crying in my pillow. Then I realized my brother would kick but for wasting my life being sad. She glanced at her watch. Shoot, I'm late for the mess hall. But, hey, Prince Grumpy, you should come by maintenance sometime. We play cards on Thursday nights. Low stakes, bad jokes, terrible coffee. You'd hate it. Why would I attend if I would hate it? Maya winked. Because hating something with friends is way better than being sad alone. She grabbed her cart and started wheeling it away, then stopped. Oh, and fair warning, Tony cheats at poker. He thinks we don't know, but we totally do. We just feel bad because he's so bad at cheating. Then she was gone, humming her strange tune, leaving Caliph alone with the stars and a feeling he couldn't quite name. For the first time in 3 years, the weight on his chest felt just a little bit lighter. He looked at his reflection in the window. Did he really have a grumpy face? He tried to remember what his smile looked like. The muscles felt rusty and used. Down the corridor, he could still hear Maya's humming. Such a small sound, but it pushed back against the silence that had wrapped around him since the war. Caliph found himself wondering what terrible coffee tasted like. What kind of bad jokes did maintenance workers tell? Did they know any Zarathi card games? The next morning, Caliph stood in the diplomatic wing, preparing for another cold meeting. Ambassador Chun approached with the daily agenda, then paused. Your Highness, did something happen? You seem different today. Caliph considered the question. I met someone who told me I have a grumpy face. The ambassador blinked in confusion. I see. Was this person terminated for their disrespect? No. Caliph adjusted his formal robes. They invited me to play cards. As he walked into the meeting room, Caliph thought about Maya's words. The war was over. He had survived. Perhaps it was time to learn what that meant. The other delegates filed in, their faces grave and tired. The Altarian representative still wouldn't look at the human admiral. The vegan ambassador kept her weapons close. 3 years of peace, but everyone still acted like soldiers. Caliph took his seat and noticed a small thing. A tiny detail he'd overlooked before. The human delegate, Admiral Torres, had a photo tucked into her datapad case. A young man in uniform, smiling bright. How many of them carried their ghosts to these meetings? How many sat here, pretending to move forward while standing still? The meeting droned on. Trade routes, reparations, border disputes. The same circular arguments they'd been having for months. Caliph found his mind wandering to Thursday night. To bad jokes and terrible coffee. When they broke for lunch, Admiral Torres approached him. Prince Caliph, might I have a word? He nodded, noting the careful way she held herself, ready for defense or attack. Even now, I wanted to apologize for the peanut incident last year. We should have been more careful with the menu. That twitch came to his mouth again. Admiral, have you ever been told you have a grumpy face? Torres blinked, clearly thrown off script. I what? Someone recently informed me that I look like, and I quote, a sad statue. I am beginning to suspect this is a common condition among those of us who survived the war. The Admiral's rigid posture softened slightly. Did this someone have any suggestions for treatment? Apparently, the cure involves bad coffee and friends who cheat poorly at cards. For the first time since he'd met her, Admiral Torres almost smiled. That sounds like terrible medicine. Yes, Caliph agreed. I'm told I would hate it. They stood there for a moment, two former enemies almost remembering how to be people. Then, Torres cleared her throat, back to business. The Altarian delegate is going to propose new restrictions on jump gate access. The vegan ambassador will object. And round we go. Torres sighed. Some days I wonder if we're making any progress at all. Caliph thought of Maya, mopping floors and reading about alien cultures in her spare time, making the future better one clean corridor and one bad joke at a time. Perhaps progress does not always happen in meeting rooms, Admiral. She gave him a curious look, but was called away before she could respond. Caliph returned to his seat, but his mind kept circling back to Thursday night, to the possibility that healing didn't have to be a solemn, lonely thing. That evening, he found himself walking through the station's lower levels. He told himself he was simply exploring, learning the layout. But his feet seemed to know where they were going. The maintenance section was clearly marked, though the sign had been vandalized with colorful stickers. One showed a cartoon Earth cat saying, I can as wrench? Caliph didn't understand the reference, but something about it made that twitch return to his mouth. He could hear voices from inside. Laughter, the clink of tools, music playing from a speaker, something with a heavy beat that vibrated through the floor. I told you, the hyperdrive doesn't make that noise because it's broken. It makes that noise because it's Tuesday. All noises are concerning when you're traveling faster than light. Maya. Only if you're a coward, Roberto. More laughter. Easy and warm and alive. Kayla stood outside, one hand raised to knock. Such a simple action, but it felt monumental. For 3 years, he'd wrapped himself in grief and dignity, made himself into a symbol of Zarathi endurance. Cold and perfect and untouchable. But maybe Maya was right. Maybe being sad alone wasn't honoring the dead. Maybe it was just being sad alone. He knocked. The door slid open to reveal a workshop that looked like organized chaos. Tools hung from every surface. Half-dismantled machinery covered the tables. In the center, 5 humans sat around a makeshift card table made from a repurposed blast door. Maya looked up from her cards, and her face lit up. Well, look what the space cat dragged in. Guys, we have royalty gracing us with his presence. The other maintenance workers turned to stare. Caliph recognized the sudden tension, the uncertainty. Was this allowed? Should they bow? Call security? I was told there would be terrible coffee, Caliph said carefully. The worst in 3-star systems, Maya confirmed, standing up. Roberto, pour His Highness a cup of that toxic sludge you call coffee. A large man with oil-stained hands fumbled for the pot. How does alien royalty take their coffee? Like everyone else, Maya said, pulling up an empty crate. In a mug, preferably without poison. That one time with the cleaning fluid was an accident. The tension broke with laughter. Caliph found himself being handed a chipped mug full of something that smelled like burnt rubber. He took a careful sip and immediately understood why they called it terrible. Good, right? Maya grinned. We think Roberto makes it with actual engine oil. It's a secret family recipe, Roberto protested. Your family must really hate people. Another worker chimed in. This one had green hair and a prosthetic arm that whirred when she moved. I'm Tank, by the way. That's Roberto, obviously. The quiet one is David, and the one reorganizing her cards for the 5th time is Lynn. I'm not reorganizing, I'm strategizing, Lynn muttered. She's cheating, Tank stage whispered to Caliph. But she's even worse at it than Tony. Where's this Tony I was warned about? Sick bay, David finally spoke, his voice soft. Try to prove he could eat Altarian fire peppers. Spoiler, he could not. Caliph felt that twitch in his mouth again. These humans were ridiculous. They'd survived the Galactic War, worked on a station full of former enemies, and spent their free time poisoning each other with coffee and watching their friend fail at eating alien food. So, Maya shuffled the cards with practiced ease. You know how to play Texas Hold'em? I'm unfamiliar with the rules. Perfect. We love taking money from newbies. She started dealing. It's simple. You get 2 cards, then we put 5 cards in the middle. Best hand wins. Also, Roberto will try to distract you with stories about his 12 cats back on Earth. Setin, Roberto Corrective. Mrs. Whiskers had kittens. As Maya explained the rules, Caliph studied his tablemates. They were all different ages, from different Earth regions, judging by their accents. Tank's prosthetic was military grade, probably a war wound. David had burn scars on his neck. Roberto wore a wedding ring, but his eyes carried the hollow look of loss. They were all survivors, just like him. But instead of standing alone at windows, they'd found each other, built this strange family in the bowels of a space station. Your bet, Your Highness, Lynn prompted. Caliph looked at his cards. A 2 and a 7 of different suits. Even he could tell this was not good. I will raise, he said, pushing chips forward. Maya cackled. Oh, you're going to fit right in. We love overconfident beginners. They played 3 hands before Caliph realized he was being thoroughly swindled. Not because anyone was cheating, but because they were all terrible players making terrible decisions, and somehow that was worse than playing against skilled opponents. This game makes no logical sense, he said after Roberto won a hand by going all in with nothing but a pair of 3s. That's because you're thinking about it, Tank explained. The secret to maintenance poker is to turn your brain completely off. Like Roberto did years ago, Maya added. Hey, I'll have you know I have 2 engineering degrees. And yet you can't figure out how to make coffee that doesn't taste like pain. They bickered and laughed, dealing him in hand after hand. Slowly, Caliph began to understand. The game wasn't about winning. It was about being together, about having something silly to focus on instead of the memories that haunted them all. So, Tank said during a break, what made you decide to slum it with us grease monkeys? Caliph considered his words. Someone told me I had a grumpy face. You do, they all said in unison. That surprised him into a sound that might have been almost a laugh. Just a huff of air, but Maya beamed like he performed a miracle. There we go. I knew there was a person under all that royal dignity. I'm always a person. Nah. Roberto shook his head. You're like the rest of the brass, walking around like ghosts, going through the motions. No offense, Your Highness. None taken. Caliph studied his terrible cards. How did you all stop being ghosts? The maintenance crew exchanged glances. It was David who answered, soft voice carrying weight. We didn't, not really. We just decided to be ghosts together. Easier to remember you're still alive when someone's throwing cards at your head because you won with a terrible hand. That was one time. Lynn protested. 6 times, everyone corrected. They played until the station's night cycle began. Caliph lost spectacularly, his pile of chips depleted by their chaotic betting patterns. But something else had happened. The cold weight in his chest had cracked just a little. Not gone, but looser. Same time next week? Maya asked as they cleaned up. I have diplomatic meetings every day. So, you have to eat sometime. Come by for lunch. I promise the food is better than the coffee. She paused. Marginally. Over the next few weeks, Caliph found himself in the maintenance section more and more. First, just for the Thursday poker games, where he learned that Tank was a former Marine who'd lost her arm saving a Zarathi civilian. That Roberto's husband had been on the Harmony when it exploded. That David had been a combat engineer who still woke up screaming sometimes. That Lynn had been a pilot who'd flown one too many suicide runs. They were all broken in different ways. But together they'd built something that wasn't quite whole, but was still good. You're getting better at this, Maya noted during one game. You almost smiled when Roberto spilled coffee on himself. I did not smile. You totally did. Your face went all twitchy. It was adorable. Heat flushed through Caliph's skin, turning it that telltale blue. The others hooted and teased, and he found he didn't mind. When was the last time anyone had called him adorable? When was the last time he'd let them? He started joining them for lunch, bringing Zarathi dishes to share. Roberto immediately tried to prove he could eat anything, leading to another sickbay visit. Tank challenged him to arm wrestling with her prosthetic, and won. David taught him human curse words that Maya insisted were actually compliments. You're being corrupted, Lynn informed him cheerfully. Pretty soon you'll be just another grease monkey with bad jokes and questionable hygiene. I maintain excellent hygiene. Give it time, Roberto said ominously. The changes were small at first. Admiral Torres mentioned he seemed less tense in meetings. His own staff started looking less nervous around him. One day, the Altarian delegate made a particularly ridiculous demand, and Caliph had to cover his mouth to hide what was definitely not a smile. But the real change came on a Thursday, 2 months after that first poker game. Caliph arrived to find the maintenance crew in crisis mode. What is wrong? He asked Maya, who was elbow-deep in a panel. Remember how I said the hyperdrive makes that noise because it's Tuesday? Well, turns out it makes a different noise on Thursday, and that one actually is bad. How bad? Like we might all explode bad. But don't worry, we're handling it. She yanked out a component that sparked ominously. Okay, we're mostly handling it. Without thinking, Caliph rolled up his sleeves. What do you need? Can you hold this steady while I reroute the power coupling? He commanded fleets, negotiated treaties. But there, in that cramped maintenance tunnel, holding wires while Maya swore creatively at stubborn machinery, Caliph felt more useful than he had in years. They prevented the explosion with minutes to spare. The crew celebrated with their terrible coffee and an emergency poker game still covered in grease and triumph. "Look at Prince Grumpy," Tank laughed. "You've got oil on your fancy face." Caliph touched his cheek, feeling the smudge. On any other day, such disorder would have horrified him. But, surrounded by these ridiculous humans who'd adopted him into their chaos, he found he didn't care. "Good thing I wore my second-best robes." "Did you just make a joke?" Maya gasped dramatically. "Roberto, check the environmental systems. I think we're running out of oxygen because Prince Caliph just made an actual joke." "It was not that remarkable." "It was terrible," David agreed solemnly. "You're officially one of us now." Something warm bloomed in Caliph's chest. Not happiness exactly, but close. Like a flower that had been dormant finally, remembering how to grow. The next morning brought another diplomatic meeting. The same circular arguments, the same old wounds. But when the vegan ambassador started her usual complaint about reparations, Caliph found himself thinking of Lynn, explaining why she always bet on inside straights. "Hope's just stupidity with better PR," she'd said. "But sometimes stupid works." "Ambassador," Caliph interrupted, surprising everyone, including himself. "What if we tried something stupid?" The room fell silent. Prince Caliph, the cold warrior, the perfect diplomat, had just suggested stupidity as policy. "I beg your pardon?" The vegan ambassador's feathers ruffled. "We have been having the same arguments for 3 years. Perhaps it is time to stop being smart about this and try something else." He thought of Roberto's coffee, Tank's prosthetic, David's quiet wisdom. What if we started with something small? One trade route, one shared project, something so minor that failing would not matter. That's... Admiral Torres frowned. "Actually not terrible. High praise indeed," Caliph said dryly, and was rewarded with what might have been a smile from the human. They spent the rest of the meeting actually talking instead of reciting positions. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was movement. When they adjourned, the Altarian delegate approached him. "You seem different lately, Prince Caliph." "Less grumpy." The Altarian spots shifted in confusion. "I was going to say rigid, but yes, that too." That evening, Caliph arrived at maintenance to find a handmade sign on the door. "Congratulations to Prince K for his first successful joke in diplomatic history. We're so proud." Maya wiped a fake tear. "Our little grump is growing up. I'm neither little nor yours." "Details." She handed him his usual mug of terrible coffee. "So, heard you shook things up with the stuffed shirts today. I merely suggested we try a different approach. By calling it stupid," Tank added, "which is the smartest thing any of you have done in years." They played cards until late, and for the first time, Caliph won a hand. Probably because Roberto was distracted by describing his cat's personalities in extensive detail, but still. "I knew you had it in you," Maya said as they cleaned up. "That almost smile is getting stronger." "I do not almost smile." "Sure you don't. And Roberto makes great coffee." "Hey." As Caliph walked back to his quarters, he passed a window showing the stars. For 3 years, he'd stood at windows like this, letting the cold of space match the cold in his chest. But now the stars looked different. Less like frozen tears, more like possibilities. He thought of his brother, who died at Kepler Station like Maya's. Thought of what he'd say if he could see Caliph now, playing cards with humans and making terrible jokes. "You always said I was too serious," he whispered to the stars. "I think you would like them. They are loud and chaotic and make terrible coffee. They are nothing like us, but perhaps that is why they help." The stars didn't answer, but for the first time in 3 years, that felt okay. He had Thursday poker to look forward to. He had meetings that might actually go somewhere. He had friends who called him Prince Grumpy and didn't let him take himself too seriously. The war was over. He had survived, and with the help of one irreverent human janitor and her crew of beautiful disasters, he was starting to remember what that meant. 6 months after that first knock on the maintenance door, everything changed. Caliph arrived for Thursday poker to find the crew unusually quiet. No music, no banter, just Maya sitting alone at the card table, staring at her hands. "Where is everyone?" She looked up, and her eyes were red. "David's in sick bay. Had an episode. Bad one." Caliph sat down across from her. He learned, over these months, that sometimes the demons came back. That healing wasn't a straight line, but a messy spiral. The others are with him? Yeah, Tank's singing those old Earth lullabies he likes. Roberto's probably trying to sneak his cats onto the station through video call. Lynn's threatening to fight his nightmares personally. She tried to smile, but it broke halfway. Some days are harder than others. Yes, Caliph agreed simply. They are. They sat in silence for a while. Not the cold silence of his years of isolation, but the warm kind that existed between friends who didn't need words. You know what's funny? Maya finally said. Not haha funny, but weird funny. When I first saw you standing at that window, looking all tragic and princely, I thought there's someone who needs to be annoyed into feeling better. But I didn't think what? That you'd actually become family. She looked at him with those honest brown eyes. That's what you are now, you know. Part of our weird little family of broken people making terrible coffee and playing cards badly. Caliph felt that warm bloom in his chest again, stronger now. I'm honored to be part of your dysfunction. See? Terrible jokes. You fit right in. She wiped her eyes. David will be okay. He always is. Tomorrow he'll be back, quiet as ever, pretending he doesn't notice when we hover. And we will hover, oh, excessively. Roberto already has a new cat video compilation ready. They set up the cards anyway, playing a quiet two-person game while waiting for news. Halfway through, Calipha's communicator buzzed. Emergency diplomatic meeting. The Altarian vegan trade route test had gone sideways. He looked at Maya, torn between duty and friendship. Go, she said. That's your other family. But come back after, okay? Bring that expensive Zarathi chocolate. David pretends he doesn't like sweet things, but he's lying. Caliph hurried to the meeting, finding chaos. Accusations flew between delegates. 3 years of careful progress threatened to crumble over a shipping manifest error. This is deliberate sabotage. The vegan ambassador's feathers stood on end. How dare you accuse us of... The Altarian delegate's spots flashed anger. Enough, Caliph said quietly, but with a command that had once directed fleets. The room fell silent. We are not at war. Stop acting like we are. Easy for you to say. The vegan snapped. The Zarathi didn't lose a colony to Altarian raids. No, we lost 3 battle groups to vegan torpedoes. And the humans lost Earth's moon to all of us. He looked around the room. We all have blood on our hands. We all have reasons to hate. But I have learned something in these past months. He thought of Maya's laugh, Roberto's terrible coffee, Tank's strength, David's quiet courage, Lynn's chaotic hope. Healing doesn't happen in this room. It happens in small places, with people brave enough to be foolish. To make bad jokes, and worse coffee. To play cards with former enemies, and call them family. Admiral Torres leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Prince Caliph? I'm suggesting we stop pretending diplomacy will fix us. We need... He paused, hearing Maya's voice in his head. We need to lighten up. All of us. We're so busy being important, we forgot how to be people. And how do we do that? The Altarian delegate asked, skepticism clear. Caliph made a decision that would have horrified his younger self. Thursday nights. Maintenance section. Deck C. Bring chips for poker and tolerance for terrible coffee. The room erupted. Protocol demanded separation between ranks. Security required careful distance between former enemies. But Caliph just stood there, thinking of David in sick bay and Maya's red eyes, and how sometimes the bravest thing wasn't commanding a fleet, but holding someone's hand while they fought invisible battles. You're serious, Admiral Torres said slowly. I am. We've tried being serious for 3 years. It hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to try being human. He paused. Or vegan. Or Altarian. Or Zarathi. To try being people who are bad at cards together. The meeting ended in confusion rather than hostility, which Caliph counted as progress. He stopped by the kitchen, charming them out of their best chocolate, then headed back to maintenance. He found a whole crew there, including David, pale but present. They'd moved the card table to surround his chair, protective without being obvious about it. Prince Grumpy returns. Tank announced. Did you save the galaxy with diplomacy? No, but I may have confused it into submission. He handed David the chocolate. Maya said you would pretend not to like this. David's scarred face shifted into what might generously be called a smile. Maya talks too much. Rude but accurate, Maya agreed. So what happened with the stuffed shirts? Caliph told them about the meeting, about his invitation. Roberto dropped his cards. You invited the brass to our poker game? Was that wrong? Wrong? It's brilliant. Lynn cackled. Oh, I can't wait to take their money. We don't play for money, Tank reminded her. We do now. They debated the logistics of mixing admirals and janitors, ambassadors, and mechanics. But David, still shaky from his episode, summed it up best. Good, he said quietly. Hard to be enemies when you're arguing about Roberto's coffee. My coffee is a treasure. Your coffee is a war crime. Everyone said together, and even Caliph joined in. The next Thursday brought unprecedented chaos to maintenance. Admiral Torres arrived first, looking like she'd rather face another battle than navigate social poker. The Altarian delegate came with 3 security guards who looked deeply uncomfortable. The vegan ambassador perched on a crate, feathers twitching. Ground rules, Maya announced, taking charge with the confidence of someone who'd fixed reactors mid-explosion. No ranks in here. No taitas. You're just people with names and terrible card skills. Roberto will poison you with coffee. Tank will take your money. David won't talk much, but that's normal. Lynn cheats, but badly, so just let her. Questions. Is this legal? One of the security guards asked. Nope, Tank said cheerfully. But neither was that time we jury-rigged the life support with gum and prayer, and look how well that worked out. The first hour was awkward. Former enemies try and make small talk while Maya dealt cards with aggressive cheer. But then Roberto spilled coffee on the Altarian delegate, and instead of a diplomatic incident, it became a shared moment of horror at the stains. How is it worse on fabric than in the mug? The delegate wondered. It's Roberto's superpower, Lynn explained. His coffee defies physics. Slowly, the ice cracked. Admiral Torres turned out to be viciously competitive, but in a fun way. The vegan ambassador told stories that were probably classified, but hilarious. Even the security guards joined in after Tank bullied them into sitting down. This is insane, Torres said after losing her 5th hand to Lynn's chaotic betting. Yep, Maya agreed. But look, nobody's yelling about trade routes. It was true. For the first time in 3 years, the various species were in a room together without agenda or argument. Just people playing cards badly and complaining about Roberto's coffee. Caliph watched it all with a feeling he finally recognized. Not quite happiness, not quite peace, but contentment. The war wounds were still there. David's hand still shook. Tank's phantom limb still hurt. His own chest still carried cold spots where grief lived. But they were healing. Together, messily, with terrible jokes and worse coffee, they were healing. Your bet, Prince Grumpy, Maya prompted. I told you not to call me that. And I told you Roberto makes good coffee. We all lie sometimes. The vegan ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter. Prince Grumpy. I like it. Very undignified. See? Maya grinned. It's catching on. Pretty soon the whole galaxy will know you as Prince Grumpy of the Zarathi, haver of serious face, drinker of bad coffee. I regret everything, Caliph said, but he could feel that twitch in his mouth again. Stronger now, threatening to become an actual smile. No, you don't, David said quietly. None of us do. And he was right. Looking around the table at this impossible gathering, Caliph felt that last frozen piece in his chest finally thaw. The war was over. They had survived. And here in this chaotic maintenance bay, they were learning what came next. The poker game became a weekly tradition. Not just the original crew anymore, but a growing mix of species and ranks. The Altarian delegate brought her daughter, who immediately declared Roberto's coffee angry water and charmed everyone. A young vegan pilot joined after hearing rumors of the galaxy's worst poker game. Even some of Caliph's own staff started attending, shocked to see their prince laughing at Lynn's terrible puns. 3 months later, at the anniversary of the peace treaty, something remarkable happened. The memorial service had always been separate affairs. each species mourning their own dead, alone in their grief. But that year, someone suggested a joint ceremony. It's what they do in maintenance, the vegan ambassador explained. When someone has a bad day, everyone shows up. So they did. Humans and Zarathi, vegans and Altarians, all standing together in the vast memorial hall. Caliph gave a speech, but not the cold, formal words of previous years. He talked about Roberto's husband and Maya's brother, about Tank's lost squad and David's nightmares, about how the dead would want them to make terrible coffee and play cards badly and find family in unexpected places. We cannot bring them back, he said, looking at the crowd of former enemies standing side by side. But we can honor them by living, by laughing, by being people together instead of ghosts alone. After the service, Maya found him by the memorial wall, where new names were etched beside old ones. Nice speech, Prince Grumpy. Very emotional. I think I saw Admiral Torres leak a feeling. That was probably just reaction to the memorial coffee. It's somehow worse than Roberto's. Impossible. Nothing is worse than Roberto's coffee. She stood beside him, studying the names. You know what's funny? What? A year ago, you couldn't even almost smile. Now look at you, making jokes at memorial services. My brother would be so proud of my corrupting influence. Caliph felt it then, not just a twitch, but an actual movement of muscles. A real smile, small, but genuine, the first in 4 years. There it is. Maya crowed. Ladies and gentlemen and various alien beings, Prince Grumpy has achieved an actual facial expression. You're ridiculous, he told her. Yeah, but I'm your ridiculous. We all are. You're stuck with us now. The whole messy, chaotic, coffee-poisoning lot of us. I know, Caliph said, and found he was still smiling. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Later that night, they held the largest poker game yet. The Memorial Hall maintenance crew had set up tables, and beings from across the galaxy sat together, playing cards and sharing stories. Roberto had made an industrial quantity of his terrible coffee, which had somehow become a badge of honor to drink. Caliph sat at the main table, watching Lynn try to teach the Altarian delegate's daughter how to cheat better. Tank was arm wrestling a vegan marine with her prosthetic. David was quietly destroying everyone at a side table, having turned out to be secretly excellent at cards when not distracted by episodes. You did this, Admiral Torres said, joining him. A year ago, this would have been impossible. I didn't do anything. I just knocked on a door. Sometimes that's all it takes. She looked at the mixed crowd. One person deciding to try something different. Although I still say the coffee is a war crime. Roberto considers that a compliment. You would. Torres hesitated, then added, I've been thinking about your speech. About ghosts. I might have been one too. We all were. Some of us still are on bad days. He thought of David's episodes, of his own moments of cold. But it's easier when you're haunted together. Is that what we are now? Together. Caliph looked at Maya, who was standing on a chair to announce a tournament with entirely made-up rules. At Tank laughing at something the vegan marine said. At Roberto trying to convince everyone his latest batch of coffee was actually good. It wasn't. At Lynn cheerfully robbing newcomers blind. At David, quiet but present, surrounded by people who would sit with him through the nightmares. Yes, he said simply. We're together. The party went until Station Dawn. Species that had tried to destroy each other now argued about card rules and competed over who could stomach Roberto's coffee longest. The memorial hall, designed for grief, rang with laughter. As things wound down, Maya appeared at Caliph's elbow. So, Prince formerly Grumpy, was it worth it? Trading all that royal dignity for this chaos. He looked at her, this small human who'd changed his life with an invitation to play cards, who'd seen past the symbol to the person underneath, who'd made him laugh again. Every second, he said, and meant it. Good. Because next week Tank wants to teach everyone human arm wrestling, and I'm pretty sure someone's going to get hurt. Probably Roberto. Definitely Roberto. She grinned. But, hey, at least sick bay is close. And they have better coffee. Everything has better coffee than Roberto's. True. But don't tell him. He's sensitive. They stood there, alien prince, and human janitor, watching their impossible family disperse with promises to meet next Thursday. The war was over. They had survived. And in the maintenance section of a space station, over terrible coffee and, worse, poker, they'd found something better than peace. They'd found hope. And Prince Caliph of the Zarathi Empire, who'd once stood at windows like a frozen statue, found himself smiling as he walked back to his quarters. Tomorrow there would be meetings and treaties and the serious business of building a future. But tonight, he'd laughed with friends who called him silly names and dealt him terrible cards and never let him forget he was more than his grief. He passed that window where Maya had first found him and paused, but not to stare at the stars in sorrow. This time, he saw the reflection of someone who'd learned to live again, who'd discovered that healing happened in maintenance bays and bad jokes, in human janitors who didn't care about protocol, and friends who'd rather play cards than be alone. "Thank you," he whispered, not to the stars, but to the memory of everyone they'd lost, "for helping us find each other." Then Prince Caliph, called grumpy by those who loved him, went to bed smiling. Because Thursday was coming, and with it another chance to lose at poker, drink terrible coffee, and be reminded that even after the darkest war, laughter could bloom again. All it took was someone willing to knock on a door and ask if you were okay, and someone else brave enough to say no, but willing to try anyway. In the end, that's how they won the real war. Not the one with ships and weapons, but the one against the cold that tried to freeze them after. They won it with warmth and stupidity, with family made of broken pieces, with the worst coffee in the galaxy and the best friends anyone could ask for. They won it together.